Hey everyone, before we dive in, I just wanted to take a quick moment and say thank you. I've been blown away by the amount of kind comments and feedback I've been getting on the past couple of breakdowns. It really means a lot and helps me to stay motivated to keep making these videos for you guys. Thank you guys for all the comments and subscribers. It's been great to see that growing and people sharing the videos. Really means a lot. So I just want to say thank you for being here and let's get into the breakdown. Today we're going to talk about maximizing your lighting setups while creating multiple different looks. So we're going to look at some clips from a music video I shot for Stephanie Hatzinikolis' song Savor Me. Today we're going to look at two different scenes from this video. We're going to look at this match cut sequence as well as this backdrop sequence. Both of these scenes in this video utilized the same lighting setup essentially, but utilizing different settings in our lighting to create vastly different looks. So let's get into it and talk about how we did it. We only had a single day for this shoot and we needed to utilize our schedule to be able to shoot both daytime interior and nighttime interior. So we shot what's called a split day, where you shoot later in the afternoon and then shoot a little bit, into the evening. So that means your call time is going to be later. It's going to give you a brief window of time that's going to be daylight, and a good majority of time it's going to be nighttime, depending on how you shift your schedule around. We started our day at around 3 in the afternoon, which was going to give us about an hour to kind of load in and get set up, and that would give us some time to get everything built, get the camera built, get all the lighting and everything loaded into the building before we started shooting, and we could utilize the daylight in the building for our day interior sequences. The location was this photo studio in downtown LA. Had these really interesting floor-to-ceiling windows that we looked at. One of my concerns with the space was it was on the third floor of this building, so it did mean that logistically it was going to be a little bit time-consuming to get gear loaded in and out, so we'd have to plan for that in our schedule. The whole space had these white walls, which might hinder some shape and just create a lot more bounce than we were going for several of our sequences. But ultimately, it ended up being a really nice canvas for us. We utilized colored lighting to give these walls, really interesting colorful wash. And even during our daylight sequences, it wasn't really an issue. So one of the things that I talked about with our location manager on the Scout was the ability to use some of the building's existing pipes to rig lighting off of. And he said that would be fine as long as the lights weren't very heavy. And that worked out just fine for us, as most of our fixtures were going to be living on stands, and the only things we would need to rig from the ceiling would be lighter fixtures like Titan tubes. One tool that I like to use on location scouts in particular that I don't think I've touched on before is called Polycam. And Polycam is a 3D LiDAR scanner that you can get for your phone if you have any of the newer iPhones that have the LiDAR sensors in the back. I found this tool really helpful when visiting a location and that I need to kind of go back through and figure out measurements of. It will create a blueprint layout, and you can also create these really cool 3D models that you can kind of fly around in. Here you can see an example of the 3D model that it created for this location. I shot this video on my Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro and paired it with my set of Leica R lenses. We also shot this video entirely on a Ronin R2 gimbal. We wanted to use the Ronin R2 for the camera movement, as well as being able to use it as sort of a remote head. So the day before shooting, I had thrown my back out, and that was going to make it really difficult for me to operate the camera. So I talked to my key grip, and we came up with a solution where he would move the camera in kind of 3D space, while I would be operating the camera remotely with a set of Noto wheels, which are basically wheels that you use to control the pan and tilt axis of the camera. And you can also control the roll, which you can see in the shot here. We utilize the third axis to add some roll into some of the shots. So we basically just used this Ronin as not only a gimbal, but as a tripod kind of fluid head as well. I found that it was going to be a lot faster to keep the camera built on the Ronin for the entirety of the music video, as opposed to swapping it over to the tripod when we needed to do static shots. We set the camera up on a C-stand so we would be able to adjust our height as needed, and we utilized that as our set of sticks. And then whenever we needed to do camera movement, we'd pop that off and go handheld. We were also able to use this on the Dana dolly for some shots. So we'd use that for pushing in and out or doing side-to-side movement. And yeah, it was really helpful to be able to just keep everything built on the Ronin. One of the issues I did run into with the Ronin, and this camera build in particular, is the fact that the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro body is so wide. It's sort of this wider DSLR style build So it made balancing the camera a little bit tricky, but we did eventually get it figured out, adding some different weights to the camera to kind of get everything built. So now that we've kind of covered our camera setup and our location scout, let's get into some of the lighting for this. We started with the shot where the camera is tilted down on the floor and booms up and pushes in as the song progresses. For the lighting for the daylight sequence, this was primarily lit with an aperture 600C in a light dome 150, and we had an aperture 600X for some fill light in a smaller light dome. And for the hair light, we had another aperture 600C through a Fresnel, and that was just going to give us this kind of harder edge light here you see for her hair. It was going to help separate her from the background. From there, we match cut into night sequences. For this, we rigged 2 Titan tubes to some of the existing ceiling pipes at the location using Cardellini clamps and a gobo head. I would have liked to use a couple more lights for the overhead, but with the layout of the location and the questionable payload that it could support on the pipes, we opted to keep it as minimal as possible. So using the Titan tubes was a great option as they're very lightweight. And I think it worked out really well. The Titan tubes acted as kind of her key light here, and we filled her in with a very saturated blue light from the aperture 600C just to the left of the camera. This is when the happy accident of that existing street light that we saw on the location scout came into play. You can see here behind Stephanie is the existing practical lamp that was in the alleyway, and that helped create some great separation from the background and added a lot more detail to the windows behind her. From the really saturated red setup, we went into our white light setup. This was kind of the more neutral color palette. We wanted to capture something that would be a little bit cleaner, alternate setup, and knowing that the Blackmagic and most digital sensors don't handle red light super well. It's a little bit hard to manipulate and you can get some clipping issues. We wanted to have a backup option for a different look. So with a couple of quick adjustments to the Titan tubes and our 600C, we were able to get a completely different look with a couple of quick adjustments on the iPad that was connected to Sidus Link for the aperture fixtures and the Astera app for the Titan tubes. Being able to change the color on the fly here with the iPad really sped up our workflow and made it really quick and easy to get a couple of different looks. Fortunately for us, the red light sequence really worked out for us and we didn't have any clipping issues, with that color once we got into the color grade. So we were able to get 3 different looks from this one lighting setup pretty quickly. From there, we moved into our backdrop vignettes. For this vignette, I used a 600X through the F10 Fresnel and the barn doors to help create some shape and color separation on her face. The backdrop itself was lit with another 600C with the light dome 150 on it. And Stephanie had a Titan tube overhead as well as an edge light to add some separation to her from the background. I made sure to keep that light rotated away from the backdrop to minimize the spill, so that wasn't going to contaminate any of the backdrop color that we'd be getting from the 600C. We only had a 2-axis set of wheels, which basically just control the pan and tilt. So in order to achieve the roll, I needed to change the function of one of the wheels on the Noda wheels. So I changed one of the functions of the wheels from pan to roll. That way I'd still be able to tilt to make small corrections while the roll was happening. And yeah, that was a quick way to get a roll function that would typically be covered by a 3rd axis on the Noda wheels. For our second backdrop here, we used a sequin backdrop to add some interesting out of focus elements into the background. That was also going to catch the light in a nice way. Here we used 4 different lights. We had the 2 aperture 600Cs on either side of her, which were providing that pink and blue wash. And we had the 600X through that F10 Fresnel to create that sort of spotlight on her in the middle here. And we kept our Titan tube on as well in the background as the hair light to add some separation. All right, guys, thank you again so much for watching. That does it for today's breakdown. If you have any questions or you want to see any other scenes from this video broken down, let me know in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not already to stay up to date with more videos coming up. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Dynamic match cuts where we'd be pushing in from our daytime sequence and then pulling out into a nighttime sequence and intercutting those different colorful looks. someone's streaming.